Hi, my name is Alex Gurvich. I'm one of the co-developers of Firefly, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to manage multiple datasets with Firefly. What that means is I'll teach you how to present the user with a drop-down interface for selecting different datasets, but also how to create different standalone iterations of Firefly that you can then host on the internet. As always, the Jupyter Notebook that I'll be going through is available online in our documentation and ships with the Firefly code in Firefly Notebooks Multiple Datasets tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've already run this clearly, so we'll just restart. There we go. So how multiple datasets are managed is with the startup.json file. The startup.json file contains a list. It's just indices mapped to JSON dirs in static data. So to give you an example, we'll create some fake data and then generate 3 different readers and use different write startup keys, keyword arguments. So here we're going to tell it to overwrite the existing startup.json file using true. This is not the default behavior, by the way. Instead, the default is append. We'll take your data that's contained in this reader and append a line, an entry to the startup.json file. And then you can also use write startup equals false to just create a reader, but not actually add it to the startup file, if for whatever reason that's what you want to do. So now that we've created these readers, we can go ahead and take a look at the contents of the startup file and see, okay, here's our array where the first element is data. That's the default value for JSON dir. And then there's a second element, fake data, which is what we passed as the JSON dir for this second reader. Notice that null data does not show up because we set write startup equals false. Now, in general, if there's only one element in the startup.json file, Firefly will just go ahead and show that one. But if there's more than one, what it will do is it will present the user with this button, which will then bring up this drop-down. So by cleverly arranging different readers and using different write startup values, you can make a drop-down that is, makes sense for whatever you're trying to do. So that's all I'll be talking about for startup files. The other thing that I wanted to talk about were standalone iterations of Firefly. So we can't come up with a very good name for this, but we're going to go with standalone iteration. A standalone iteration is when you want to have a version of Firefly that exists with a specific data set and host it on the internet. So I have 3 such versions hosted at this well-designed landing page where different data is stored in my dropdown. This is an older version of Firefly that I haven't updated yet with the new logo and UI. So this is for M12i. It only has data for M12i. Then M12f, and so on. And so by combining different startup.json files with different standalone iterations of Firefly, you can host versions on the internet that contain specific data for a user to just go to a URL and have it load. To make that easier, I put together this copy Firefly source to target method for any reader class. I'll talk a little bit more about this init GitHub pages keyword argument. It defaults to naming the directory my Firefly, But of course, you can pass that in as a target, which is an optional keyword argument. Now that we've created that directory, let's go ahead and check out what's in there. See, it's just the bare bones index.html. And then if we look inside static, there's the data directory, and all of the source files, of course. But inside the data directory, there's only the data that's contained in the reader class in this instance. And so we named that data, remember, because that's the default JSON dir. And there's only one entry in the startup file because that's the only reader that we ran. If we had set init GitHub pages to true, then this would execute a script that I put together that uses the GitHub command line API to create a new repository, upload and push your data, and then enable GitHub pages. Now, of course, there's a bunch of error messages showing up here for repository creation failed, and GitHub pages already enabled because for me, this already exists. But if you were to run this or change the name of your directory, you'd be able to visit your GitHub username.github.io / the name of your directory, and the files that we just created would show up here. Now, all of this is done using the GitHub command line API, which requires an OAuth token. So this is something that I've generated, but in general, you might not have that. So if you need to generate a token, if you just run this with init GitHub pages, it will create an error message because it won't know where to find your OAuth token. It defaults to .github.token in your home directory. And to generate that token, in this error message, it'll point you straight to the link, github.com/settings tokens, and you'll see an OAuth token option. Then if you copy that to a file, for example, .github.token in your home directory, then the rest of the script will be able to execute. And that should save you the trouble of constantly having to create a new repository, upload everything, push it, enable the GitHub pages, and in just one line, you can create a URL that you can share with somebody. So this is something that I've only just recently put together, but has really helped me out as I'm making, all of these different versions with startups and stuff. So as always, if you have any more questions, please drop me a line in the GitHub issues or shoot me an email at agurvich@u.northwestern.edu. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and I especially hope that you enjoy using Firefly.